Hi, third grade. This is the second half of the fraction review for the rest of the year. Today's lesson has to do with comparing fractions. That's what your learning target involves, to be able to compare fractions and solve word problems involving fractions. Yesterday's video was a little bit wonky. I had a hard time making sure you got to see everything, so hopefully I will do a better job of that today. So you remember that we used to have an anchor chart that used to have these 3 rules on it. And well, they were a little shorter than this, but I want to kind of go over these and remind us of how we did compare fractions based on if it has a different numerator or different denominator and how we made those comparisons. So let's go over this real quick. So comparing fractions anchor chart. So here's a unit fraction. A unit fraction is just one of those pieces. So when we are looking at a fraction strip, it's one piece, just one of the sections of the strip. So like 1/2, 1/3, 1/5, 1/4, and so forth. Well, the rule we know is that the larger the denominator, that the smaller the piece gets, right? So 8 is bigger than 6, but that 8, that means more cuts. That means of the cake, so the piece is smaller. So the rule is the larger, or the smaller the denominator, the larger the fraction. So in this case, 2 is the smallest number, and therefore it is the largest piece. Or 1 whole would be 1/1, right? And that is obviously the largest one, because 1 is the smallest. And they have a little example here. So 1/2 is only 1 cut into 2 pieces, whereas 1/4 is 4 pieces, so that 1/2 is obviously larger than the 1/4. So then we have our next one. So that's if we have just a 1 on the top as a unit fraction and the denominator is different. So fractions that have the same numerator, now remember, numerator is the number on the top, denominator is the number on the bottom. So if you have the same numerator, so say all of these have 3, the smaller the denominator, the larger the fraction, right? So that still goes with the smaller the denominator, the larger the fraction. So if the numbers on the top are the same, then we look at the bottom. And if it's got a smaller number, we know that's a bigger piece. So 3/4 is going to be, there's 4 sections here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have 3 of them. That's that section. And 3/6, then we know we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections, and 1, 2, 3 smaller pieces are going to be smaller than 3 larger pieces. All right, so even though the 4 is bigger in this case, or the 4 is smaller than the 6, the pieces are bigger. All right, fractions that have the same denominator, then you look at the numerator, and the greater the numerator, the greater the fraction. So if you have 1/4, that's obviously going to be smaller than having 3/4. The pieces of the pie are exactly the same size. So if you have 1 piece of the pie or 3 pieces of the pie, obviously 3 of the fourths is going to be bigger than the 1/4. So keeping those 3 rules in mind and thinking about what it looks like on the fraction strips, you can always use the fraction strips and the number line to figure out how many things are bigger or smaller. So we're going to do some problems using those ideas in mind. And so if you have, please make sure you have scratch paper to help me out here, because you might be doing some drawing or some looking at some things. All right, so the first one we're going to do is 2/2 and 2/3. We're going to use the less than, greater than, or equal to sign. So 2/2, 2/3. So there's the rule with the numerator is the same, but the denominator is different. So numerator is the same. There we go. So if the numerator is the same, then the smaller the denominator, the larger the fraction. So here's 2 is smaller than 3, so 2/2 is larger than 2/3. 2/2 is a whole, isn't it? So if we were going to draw a picture, just to make sure, if we have 2/2, there's the halves, and then of course we have 2 of them, so the whole thing, or 2/3. Here's our 3 sections. There's 1 section, 2 sections. That one is obviously the bigger one, right? All right, 4/6 and 5/6. So let's look and see what rule that is. 4/6 and 5/6. So in this case, the denominator is the same And we just need to look at the numerator, and the greater the numerator, the greater the fraction. So if you have 4/6 or 5/6, which would you rather have? You'd rather have 5/6. So the pieces again are the same size, just the amount of pieces that you've got. All right, number 15, 5/6 and 5/3. Okay, so here's our numerator on the top again. Same numerator. So we look at the number on the bottom. And in this case, the 3 is the smaller number, so that's the bigger pieces. So 5 of the bigger pieces is going to be greater than 5 of the smaller pieces. In fact, 5/3 is more than 1, where 5/6 isn't even a whole. But 5/3 is more than a whole because we know 3/3 is a whole. So we have 1 whole and then some extra. All right, let's look at 19. 5/8 and 3/8. So let's look at our rules. 5/8 versus 3/8. So now here's our denominator is the same, and our numerator is the different one. So the greater the numerator, the greater the piece. So the 8s are the same. So 5/8 is going to be greater than the 3/8. And we can even see that on our fraction strips. If we look at our 8s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them is bigger than 1, 2, 3 of them. We can definitely see that in real life. All right, now next one we're going to do is 4/4 and 6/6. So 4/4, let's draw a picture of that. So here's my fourths, 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, covering, all right, and 6/6. All right, so here's my 6. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I need 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What do we notice about that? They are equal. Because 4/4 equals a whole, 6/6 equals a whole. There you go. All right, so that one's a little bit different because the numerators are different and the denominators are different, but you can draw yourself a picture to make sure. The last one we're going to go over is 8/1, and 12/1. Okay, so remember when it's over 1, that means it's a whole. It's like dividing. 8 divided by 1 is 8. 12 divided by 1 is 12. So these are 8 wholes and 12 wholes. Well, obviously, I would like the 12 wholes for sure. Because the number on the bottom is the same, so then we look to the number on the top. All right, so if we did puzzled penguin, I'm not going to write a lot today, or write it down, but let's just talk about it. So today my teacher asked me to compare 3/7 and 3/9, and to explain my thinking. I wrote 3/7 equals 3/9. My thinking is that both fractions have 3 unit fractions, so they must be equal. Why is my work correct? If not, please correct my work and tell me what I did wrong. How did you know my answer is wrong? Well, we could even draw him a picture, right? So if we were trying to prove to him, that he had the incorrect answer, 9ths is going to be a little dicey for me. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, 3 of those, 1, 2, 3. And 7ths, oh boy, that's probably not going to work out so well for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, those aren't exactly even, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we're looking at 3 of them, even from our picture, we can tell that is, a little bit, that this piece is going to be bigger than that. My drawing is not super great, but we can look, but we can also follow our rules. And our rule being, if we know that the same numerator, then we know that the smaller number has the bigger pieces. So if we were an so obviously, no, he's wrong. And that 3/7 is greater than 3/9. All right. Okay, so now so part of our learning target today was also being able to solve problems using these rules and just making sense of them. So Rosa buys 3/4 pounds of cheddar cheese. Lucy buys 3/8 pounds of goat cheese. Good job, Lucy. Yay. Who buys more cheese? I love goat cheese. All right, so if we're looking there, so we have the same numerators. And so we look at those denominators. We know that the smaller the number, the bigger the piece. So we know that 3/4 of a pound is going to be greater than 3/8 of a pound. And we can even look at that again, if we need to, on some fraction strips. here we go, 3/8. 1, 2, 3. Here's our 3/8. And then the other one was our 3/4. 1, 2, 3. So this one versus this one. Definitely the cheddar cheese one. All right, Lester walks 3/4 of a mile to school. Bert said that he walks farther because he walks 6/8 of a mile to school. Is his statement correct? Explain your answer. So let's look here. So 3/4, 1, 2, 3. So here's our line here. And the other one's 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What do you notice about those lines, my friend? They are equal. So did he walk farther? No, no. They both walked equal distance. There we go. And the last one. Rusty painted 5/6 of a mural for the school hallway. Has he painted more than half of the mural? Explain your answers. So here we go. Here's our mural. Okay. And he's going to have 6. So making our pieces as good as we can equal. So he did 5/6 of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5/6. And it wants to know if he painted more than half. So if we look at half, here's our half. All right, and that says, hint, find an equivalent fraction for a half. Here's the half mark. Well, so yes, he has painted more than half. And we can say because 3/6, 1, 2, 3 is half of the wall. 5/6 is greater. All right, so we've used our practical knowing how big something is using our comparing fractions anchor chart and our ability to draw. So today you're going to do the assignment about comparing fractions on Think Central. I strongly suggest you have some pieces of paper so you can draw yourself a picture if you need to. And also remember, try to focus on the rules that we need to know. All right, good luck. Make sure that you turn it in so I can see your score and give you credit.